Hello, critical thinkers. Welcome to this newest episode of the Healthy and Awake podcast, where today we're talking about something that is definitely a little different. Maybe something you might not expect a board certified health coach to be talking about. But here's the thing, this is relevant to health. And that's this idea of fifth generation warfare, which isn't your typical Call of Duty style warfare. It's something that affects all of us. It's something that possibly affects our health. It involves propaganda and cognition and chemical offensive maneuvers and all sorts of interesting approaches in this new type of warfare. And when you really look deep into it at some of the strategies for this sort of thing, it becomes clear that it's possible. This sort of thing is ongoing. As a matter of fact, it is definitely ongoing, not only possible. And like I said, it affects all of us. So it is important to talk about this and understand how we can protect ourselves and how that might tie into the possibility of World War III. So this is extremely relevant and important. So let's get into it. So first, let me say, this is still pretty new. This is episode 11. I've been messing around with the podcast, what works, what doesn't, changing things up. I've learned a lot already. When I started this, I honestly wanted to do an episode every day. And now it's looking like 2 to 3 per week because I want to offer quality. I have all these ideas in my head. They're there. It's just a matter of organizing them and getting them in a way that makes sense to an audience. And that does take some time, especially if I want to make this entertaining and include things like clips that are relevant, current event type stuff, which I do have today, some current event stuff. Because like I said, this is ongoing, fifth generation warfare. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to make that crystal clear and pretty much undeniable by the end of this episode. And some of the evidence of this type of warfare, possibly, is when you look around and you see balloons in the news. Like, what is that about? Balloons in the news. There are so many things that are going on that we could talk about. Things that implicate people in high positions of power. I'm not going to exactly get into that. I don't want to get into politics. That's for you to figure out. There are other shows for that. But it is a fact that there are really a lot of different things that we could be talking about in the media. And when they talk about aliens and balloons, that's kind of a red flag, especially as you think about fifth generation warfare, part of fifth generation warfare is a cognitive approach, attacking the mind, literally. And I realize that that might sound conspiratorial or off putting to some people. So I did my due diligence here and I have some pretty solid and stellar sources that I will include in the show notes. These are things that you can't really argue against. So the first one in particular, this is a pamphlet from 2022. It's called The Cognitive Warfare First NATO Science Meeting Bordeaux. I think that's how you say that word because it ends in AUX. So this is a long PDF you can download online on the NATO website. So this is a government thing, or at least an institutional thing. And in this PDF, they talk about what is cognitive warfare, uh, how can the mind be attacked, what are some of the implications of that. And so I took some notes on this book that we're going to cover today. But that's not the only source. I have another one. It is a new book from General Michael Flynn. The book is called Fifth Generation Warfare, where, from a very modern perspective, I mean, if anyone knows this stuff, it is General Michael Flynn. And it's a really great book. It's an easy read, and it goes into a lot of the different aspects of fifth generation warfare and how that can affect our mind and even our health. And Part of the reason that I want to talk about this is because there are ways that we can fight against aspects of fifth generation warfare that might be influencing our decision making, our reasoning, our physical health. And health coaches come into the picture here because we help people make better decisions. We help people move in the direction of a healthy lifestyle. And so there are a lot of different types of people who are fighting against fifth generation warfare efforts. And I do believe health coaches are part, whether they realize it or not, I do believe health coaches are part of that effort. Now, I do have some clips here, and like I said, I am going to get into more details about what is fifth generation warfare. But like I said in the very beginning here, when you look around at the balloons and alien talk, and even that the real things like the trains derailing, and I don't know, if somebody looks closely at messaging and the way that these things are put together and broadcasted through society and the way that everybody seems to be on the same page, that's a big red flag. We're all different people, we all have different focuses and all that with different agendas, personal agendas, goals and interests and personalities. When we all are on the same page about something like balloons, it's kind of a red flag. And I think it's worthy of suspicion. But that's not exactly what I'm here to talk about. That's just a possible component of fifth generation warfare, because part of what fifth generation warfare entails is a cognitive attack. And we're going to make that more clear. Um, so people can be distracted very easily by stories broadcasted on the news and social media. That's where we spend a lot of time nowadays, is scrolling through our phones. And that's just like with physical war, how you can attack people on land. Well, social media or digital space can be thought of as a new type of land. This is areas where we are, mentally present. These are areas where we are, in a sense. And it's kind of like the Wild West, right? We already know things like bots, and even forget the bots. What about people, active human beings with agendas going around influencing people? And so the digital space is like the Wild West right now, and it is a very neat tool for influencing the human mind. And we're seeing that with the Twitter files that have been released. If you've been paying attention to that, you know that some of the things that have been claimed over the past 3 years are total bullshit. A lot of the people who we are supposed to trust, a lot of the authority figures, politicians, experts, medical authorities, all kinds of people have been caught uh, spreading misinformation, let's say, and propaganda, which we know confirmed from the Twitter files, and we're even seeing the Twitter files being talked about in congressional hearings. So I'll leave the making connections. I'll leave that up to you. But when you think of something like Ohio, this train derailment that happened in Ohio, this has direct impact. This has a direct impact on people's health. The vinyl chloride that, and that's just one of the few different things that was a result of the train derailment. And it's interesting how for the past 3 years they said, put a mask on. The air is not healthy. The flu is in the air. Coronavirus is in the air. Put on a mask. Protect yourself from the air. And now we have actual harmful chemicals that we know, without a doubt, are harmful to health and human and animal health. I mean, people's pets are dying, fish are dying, people are getting rashes and headaches and all kinds of horrible effects. And that has an impact on health. And so there were like 7 trains that derailed in the course of 3 weeks. And uh, 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 as I always like to disclaim, I'm not here to make conspiracy theories, but who knows? Maybe sometimes 7 trains derail by coincidence, I'm sure. We don't need to critically think about that. We don't need skepticism. Let's just accept whatever the TV is or is not telling us, right? The TV isn't talking about how weird it is that 7 trains derailed and they're saying, "Yeah, don't worry about it. Just get back to work. Go back to work. Don't think about this." The EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is telling people that this chemical that they've used in war, where they would have vinyl chloride in some instances used for war purposes, that's safe to breathe. It's fine. It's safe to drink the water. Don't worry about it. We should trust these people, right? What's even weirder is the Netflix movie that came out, I believe, a few months ago. I don't know what it's called, but I heard this from a few sources. There was a Netflix movie that took place in Ohio. A train derailed in the movie, and they had to evacuate the town in a Netflix movie that happened 3 months ago. I don't know. I'm not saying that there's a connection there, but isn't that really weird? It's weird. I don't know. So it does seem like some sort of possible chemical attack, and this would be very characteristic of fifth generation warfare. Let me go ahead. I have my notes here that are keeping me on a trajectory here. So I want to remember to go back to propaganda and some of these other chemical things. But first, just to avoid confusion, let me give you some definitions here. So fifth generation warfare, what is it? Let's start with the other generations of warfare, just to give a better perspective. So this is me reading from my notes. First generation warfare. This is characterized by the use of massed manpower, with armies formed of masses of soldiers armed with muskets and bayonets. Tactics during this time were linear, with armies facing each other on the battlefield in line formation. So very organized, very neat, very simple, very direct. Second generation warfare. This is characterized by the use of firepower, with the development of rifling and the machine gun, leading to a focus on firepower over maneuver. Tactics during this time were characterized by trench warfare and static defensive positions. So things are starting to get a little more complicated here with second generation warfare. Third generation warfare. This is characterized by the emphasis on maneuver and mobility, with the development of armored vehicles and air power, leading to a focus on combined arms operations and the ability to strike deep within enemy territory. So now we're getting a little more precise with our attacks, emphasis on maneuverability. What about fourth generation warfare? This is characterized by the blurring of the lines between war and politics, and the use of non state actors and irregular forces. Tactics during this time include guerrilla warfare, terrorism, and insurgency. So this is already fourth generation warfare beyond, well beyond first generation, where it's just two people sort of staring at each other, two groups of people staring at each other fighting with muskets. Fast forward to fourth generation warfare, things are irregular warfare. Now, with what's going on today, fifth generation warfare, which is said not by me, but by many uh, military personnel, military experts, as well as many people who follow this and study this quite closely. And so I have some clips to highlight the reality of this, because one thing that is not often talked about is fentanyl, which I know is a political issue. Some people make it a political issue. I don't see it as such. When people are dying, that doesn't seem very political to me. And as a matter of fact, according to my research, fentanyl deaths are the number one cause of death for young males in America. Let that sink in. It's disturbing because you don't hear that at all. And that's just the current. You can check the show notes, because I have a lot of sources for today's episode in the show notes, and there are a few sources that indicate that to be the fact. Fentanyl, number one death for young males. But not only that, when we think about chemical attacks or just chemicals influencing our health, whether or not it is deliberate or intentional as a form of warfare, we've already talked in a previous episode about how chemicals are ubiquitous and many of them are very toxic. Many of them coincidentally just happen to harm reproductive health. I'm sure that's just an accident. I know some people out there publicly position themselves saying that we need to depopulate the earth. Um, and some of those same people also have a hand in chemical companies that just happen to make these chemicals that we know harm health. But I'm sure there's no conflict of interest there. I know the people in power, they want to protect our health, which is why I trust them with all my heart. So, uh, but fentanyl is a big problem. These toxic chemicals are a big problem. And if this isn't a topic that you are too familiar with, fentanyl, if you haven't been hearing the news about this, I have 2 clips here specific to fentanyl. They're very short. Here's a 23-second clip.
It's demonstrated here, uh, fentanyl sized against the penny. That's technically a lethal dose, enough to kill. Um, and we know that last year, 13,000 pounds of fentanyl was seized in 2023. That's enough to kill 333 million Americans 9 times over.
330 million Americans. The amount of fentanyl seized, that's a video clip of a congressional hearing where he's showing a picture of a penny, and next to the penny are like a few crumbs of fentanyl. That is a lethal dose. A few crumbs that are 100 times smaller than a penny is a lethal dose. And they confiscated 330 million pounds. That is enough to kill, or I'm sorry, they killed enough fentanyl to kill 330 Americans 9 times over. So if this were talked about, I wouldn't be as suspicious. If everyone were on the same page here, the media that supposedly cares about us, if they were saying like, "Hey guys, wake up! We need to do something about this fentanyl. Everybody should be talking about this." I would be a little less suspicious if there was genuine concern about this problem that is affecting our country quite significantly. But what it seems very suspicious to me is the fact that this is never talked about and that it I don't know. It is it not suspicious? Am I crazy here? Here's another clip, okay? This is not a political thing. This is a clip of a mom who lost her son to fentanyl. And so this is a heavy clip. I'm warning you now. She's not, of course, happy in this clip, understandably. So I'm just consider that a trigger warning as much as I hate that phrase. But here we go.
And I appreciate you using the term fentanyl poisoning because that's what it was. It wasn't an overdose. They had no idea that they were doing anything that could kill them. And it's because fentanyl got into this country. I heard this man over here from the Cato Institute, talk about, well, it's because of demand. What I'm hearing him say is they asked for it. The hell? Seriously? You kidding me? We need to protect our children. They didn't ask for that. This wasn't demand. They wanted the fentanyl. They didn't want fentanyl. They thought they were getting Percocets. Okay? He's absolutely clueless. Like, total disconnect from what's happening. Um, and to say, oh, let's just give them strips or let's give them rehab. Well, you know what? My son Caleb went to federal rehab. It was a flap house. It wasn't real rehab. You're wasting your money where you're sending it. I'm telling you, it's a waste of money because it wasn't real rehab. And the government paid for their drugs under COVID. They encouraged them not to stay home. All these young people in our support groups, we all talk about it, how they paid for their drugs with the federal funds under COVID that gave them incentive not to work. Healthy young people.
I don't know how anyone can be an apologist. Like she in the video, she was referring to some guy who said that they were asking for it basically, or it's a response to demand. There are apologists for these sorts of things. People, I don't know if it's driven by money, if they just have no compassion, or like what the hell's going on there. But this seems something worthy of discussing. Meanwhile, we have our own government sending our money to pay for pensions to people in Ukraine, and I don't know. Obviously, fentanyl doesn't have a direct connection to Ukraine, but like these types of problems between the train in Ohio and the fentanyl deaths and our plummeting uh, fertility rates. No one's talking about these things at all. All they talk about is like, let's send more money to Ukraine, and it's. I know this is a health show. I'm sorry, but it's infuriating because this does even if it is indirect, it has an effect on our health physically and mentally. This has an effect on our society. People are dying. So I don't know. It's just I feel obligated to talk about it because you certainly don't see this on TV. When I bring it up in regular conversation, so people have no idea what I'm talking about. And I think part of the reason it is easy to dismiss these things, it's easy to have opinions that are just disconnected from reality. That whether you're not thinking about this or whether you're accepting it in some way, this isn't normal. And how do we get to this point where something so abnormal can just be normalized and accepted? Well, I use this word a lot, but propaganda is certainly a factor. Propaganda and cognitive warfare is a key component of fifth generation warfare. Let me go ahead and move in my notes again. So I already explained the different types of warfare, but just to highlight this type of reality, let me see. Let me find it. Here we go. The different domains of warfare. So, domain meaning like where it takes place. Most people, right off the bat, if they were to think about it, you would come up with land, sea, and air. That's where war can take place. Air Force, Navy, Marines, Army, land, sea, and air. You also have Space Force, space, fighting the aliens, or doing whatever the hell they do in space. What are some of the other domains of war? Land, air, sea, space, cyber. Social media is a new type of land. People spend time there. We even call it digital real estate because it is a type of space where your mind is residing. So it can be thought of like land warfare, but the land is digital. So some pretty big implications there. Well, what else? Land, air, sea, space, cyber, cognition, the mind. And we know the propaganda has been used all throughout history. We've covered that a little bit. Most obviously, people think of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. So these are the domains of war today. And I think most notable are cyberspace as well as cognition, the mind. Now, the mind is attacked with propaganda, and that cyberspace, the social media, is a good domain to use that propaganda. And for those who still have not accepted the possibility that propaganda might be affecting them, because I actually saw a poll where somebody asked a large audience, do you think propaganda is affecting you? It was 50% say no. Even the people who are aware of propaganda are foolish enough to believe that it's not affecting them. That is wrong. Propaganda runs the world. We've covered this already. If you haven't heard this, go back to episode 1 and even some of my other episodes. I talk about this a lot. But now let's get more specific. NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, is a United States federal law that is passed annually to authorize defense-related expenditures and policies. One provision that has raised concerns in the NDAA is Section 1078, which allows for the creation and dissemination of propaganda materials. So it's legal. The government under the Obama administration has legalized the targeted propaganda to be dispersed throughout wherever. It does not specify. And this is law. You can check this out for yourself. NDAA, Provision 1078. Also worth considering is Operation Mockingbird. That is a CIA project. It's funny how whenever you talk about something like this, people immediately dismiss it or roll their eyes. You can't say conspiracy, or you can't say CIA operation or CIA project without somebody dismissing it immediately, which is really annoying because we know that CIA projects and operations to target the American population with psychological operations it's a real thing. We have many instances proving that this thing goes on. And there have been even hearings about this. With Operation Mockingbird in particular, the execution was so corrupt that they got publicly reprimanded because they ended up in court. Now, supposedly they stopped these types of propaganda projects. Operation Mockingbird was the CIA disbursement of intelligence agents into the media. And many people who you might call conspiracy theorists believe that some of the figures you see on TV are really just intelligence agents. I don't know. I'm not saying that. But there's legal precedent for it. It's been tried before. I'm sure it went away. That would be ridiculous if psychological operations where intelligence agents would go on TV to shape your opinions and narratives in your head and thoughts to serve them instead of you. Come on. That would be ridiculous. Let's be reasonable here. So the propaganda does go on. And it's actually been going on for much longer than people realize. Like a lot longer. So here's a clip of Yuri Bezmenov, who is a KGB defector. This is a clip from the mid-1980s, where as a defector from the KGB, he warned Americans about some of the intelligence operations efforts to implement ideological subversion, which is, I think, fun to say, but not as fun to experience because any country, any given country has an underlying ideology, a type of mentality that is collectively held by the people in that country. Ideological subversion is the idea that some sort of force or institution can subvert or infiltrate or try to tarnish that ideology, the current ideology. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, whatever it is, to subvert the existing ideology of a populace. I could say more, but I'll let him explain it himself. This is a 2-minute clip. Very powerful stuff here.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand.
There's nothing to do with espionage. Only about 15% of time, money, and manpower is spent on espionage as such. The other 85% is a slow process, which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information, even if you prove that white is white and black is black. You still cannot change the basic perception and the logic of behavior. In other words, these people, the process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. To get rid society of these people, you need another 20 or 15 years to educate a new generation of patriotically minded and common sense people who would be acting in favor and in the interests of the United States society. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. It's what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely.
Some pretty crazy stuff, and some things that stood out to me there are this idea of how if this ideological subversion process has been done correctly, you can show the people the truth. They can have all the information, factual, correct information in the world, and it won't make a difference because they have been subverted to such an extent that they don't even know how to process what is real or what isn't. And I know people don't like this, and this is maybe controversial, but the first thing I think of is masks. From day one, myself, as well as many other medical professionals, I'm not a medical professional, but other people who are medical professionals said, using the health science, the medical science, the literature, that masks are not going to prevent the spread of coronavirus, and it might even make it worse. I backed up my case with a very strong article with sources, and I wasn't the only one. And so, I mean, to me, when I think of this idea of you can show the people the truth and it won't make a difference, I think of, I mean, many things, but I think the softest possible example here is as masks, because the truth, the facts are out. And now it is commonly accepted. You're seeing this in the news, even. You're seeing people allowed to talk about this because we have enough information to make it undeniable, even the people who have been lying about this for the past few years. Another interesting thing that stood out to me in that clip is how it only takes a few years to destabilize a country, up to 5 years, 3 to 5 years. That's pretty much an entire presidential term. Isn't that interesting? So, I don't know. Why would our, like, the medical experts in our own country lie to us about something like getting us to comply with masks? Why would they want mask compliance? Huh. I don't know. I'll have to think about that. I have no idea. But, this idea of exposing truths and the truth finally coming to light is, I mean, a big part of the reason I even started this show in the first place, because I've had a very frustrating past few years talking about things that have uh, come true that we now know undeniably are true. And we're just getting started, right? You look at the Twitter files, a lot of the things that people have widely accepted are now coming to light as being lies. We're seeing that with the Twitter files. If you don't follow that, I recommend it. Elon Musk, who has been helping to put out the Twitter files, has been indicating that the Fauci files are coming soon. I'm excited for that. We know that asshole has been lying about a whole lot of things. If anybody has read the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, we know for sure there's a whole lot of corruption and lies there. And I know some people love Fauci like he's some sort of deity, but this is just the reality. So, part of fifth generation warfare and what really makes all of this relevant is the blurring of the lines between military and civilian life, which maybe I didn't emphasize too well in the beginning. I'm gonna have to work on getting my outlines in better order, but that is a key characteristic of fifth generation warfare, not just the cognitive aspect of it, but the fact, like I said in the very beginning, it's not like Call of Duty warfare. It's not like, hey, these people over there are fighting. Who cares? I'm over here comfortable, in my own home. The thing about fifth generation warfare is it can be in your home thanks to propaganda and social media. And even if you aren't one to possibly suspect that our own government or people in our own country could possibly do these types, like do harmful fifth generation warfare things against the own populace of that country, most people would accept foreign interference with fifth generation warfare. So that could be like the bots that are infiltrating Twitter and, um, election interference using Twitter bots and things like that. Please understand that I'm not partisan. I know some of these topics edge on politics, but I have no political party. I think that putting yourself into a category like that kind of limits the thinking because it's like team sports where, oh, I'm blue or I'm red and I have to stick with my team. I don't like that. So it's funny when some people hear me talk about borderline political topics, they often make assumptions about what political party I am, and uh, it's part of what's funny is that 50% of the people guess that I'm blue, and 50% of the people guess that I'm red, and neither of them are true. But that's a shortcut. It's a mental failure, not exactly a failure. It can be a mental failure to just try to put somebody in a box like that to sort of not have to really think about things very deeply. Because when you put somebody in a box like that, you're just like, oh, well, I got them all figured out. So I just want to say that because I know some of these topics borderline on politics, and I am not political. I have my own opinions, but that's uh, not exactly for this show. So, like I said, fifth generation warfare has a blurring of the lines between military and civilian life. So, it is fluid and nonlinear in nature. It involves the influencing of perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors of individuals and populations rather than on controlling physical territory. The propaganda war is definitely part of it. Information warfare, cognitive warfare, psychological operations to manipulate cultural norms and values. And if you think that maybe, hey, this seems like this is a little too far, getting carried away here. There's no way that war is on this level where it's now influencing every aspect of life. I mean, there's a few pieces to that. We know that the military industrial complex is a type of industry, and like many industries, growth is sought after. So this is an industry that makes money, that grows and grows and grows. And we'll spend all day talking about the car industry or obvious industries that we can see, but not many people talk about the military industrial complex that keeps growing and growing. And just something worth thinking about. But not only that, as a health coach, one thing that we emphasize is holistic health. Let's look at the whole picture. We're not just looking at blood work, right? We're looking at the whole picture. What is your sleep like? What is your stress like? Physical activity or nutrition, all those little pieces. Well, fifth generation warfare is like a holistic type of warfare. Hey, we've got the sea, land, and the air covered. Let's be holistic about this. Let's go into cyber warfare. Let's attack the mind. Let's blur the lines between military and civilian life. And really, everybody is in this war, whether they like it or not. It's kind of scary. So, here's an example of probably the most controversial example I could give on how propaganda or fifth generation warfare can influence behavior. Maybe I should leave that one out. There's already been a few episodes where I've broadcasted and I had to take it down because I say certain keywords that, for a few reasons, I don't want out there quite yet. And I've been trying to be more careful. So I'm sorry to tease you like that. I'm going to hold my tongue on what I was about to say. But here's the thing. What I will be announcing soon for my business is a new type of subscription service. I want this to be like a maybe you call it a Netflix for red pills, if you want to call it that, where it's not just health. I want to talk about health. I want to talk about time management. I have a book that is coming out called Creating Time Wealth. And I'm going to be talking about that. This is not a time management book that you have ever seen anything like. It is extremely unique and original, something that I've been working on for a long time. And so I have a plan to attach that to this membership and sort of drip it out over time in a way that will change people's lives. This is next level time management. But not only that, the membership will include aspects of building your own online business. I believe that can make a case for that being part of health because nowadays financial health is an issue for many people, and having freedom and autonomy to travel if you want to, and maybe avoiding the stresses that come along with responding to someone else as your boss, Well, I want to offer people the opportunity to avoid some of the mistakes that I've made with building my business because it took me a while to get here. I've been working on this forever, and I'm very happy with where things are at now. I've built a business to give myself freedom, and I mean, this is my voice, right? This isn't something that it's just like I'm trying to just make money, so let me find some opportunity to make money. No, this is my passion and my mission, and I can make money doing that, which is very cool. And so I want to help other people, health coaches or not, definitely health coaches. But even if you're interested in building an Etsy shop or whatever it is, if you want to learn how to make money online and have that freedom to live a lifestyle that's comfortable to you, keep an eye out for that announcement, or you can subscribe to my newsletter at mikevera.com. uh, so that's a new thing as well. In the past, I said it all goes to the same place. Well, MikeVera.com is a little new. I changed it so it has all my social media links and all that. So if you want to find out more about me, go to MikeVera.com. If you want my business, go to redpillhealthandwellness.com. Either way, you'll find pretty much everything at either of those sites. But the reason I brought that up is because one thing that I'm going to do with this membership is exclusive podcast episodes or clips from podcasts, things that I might censor myself uh, during like a broadcast like this. I might withhold certain opinions or information so that I'm not getting flagged by the algorithms or uh, just so I'm extra careful, right? Because if it's a general audience, I might say things that piss people off, and I don't want to do that. So if I have some assurance that you're in this inner circle type thing where you already like my message, you're looking for more of it, well, I can have some certainty there that I can speak a little more freely than I would on YouTube. And so this is going to be especially neat once I have guests. I've already been doing some outreach to some really cool guests where we talk about health topics that are never talked about, things like all forget all that boring stuff like do your sit-ups. Here are neat ways to do your sit-ups, or let's talk about the healthiest salad. Like, that's fine. You could find that anywhere. It's good. It's that that information is important, but it bores the shit out of me. And if it bores me, well, I can't exactly expect my audience to be not bored. So, but I digress. Keep an eye out for that membership. With fifth generation warfare here, there is potential for positive impact because we know in war there are, at least we think about it as both sides. There's the good guys and the bad guys, and that's definitely oversimplistic, and that's not exactly how it is. But that doesn't mean that these tactics can't be used for good. If we know that bad guys are infiltrating our cognition and using social media to manipulate our opinions, well, it would follow that good guys can counter those movements. And of course, there's the term counter propaganda that does exactly that. So we could use the same distribution channels that fifth generation uh, war people use against us to promote health, to reduce disease, to spread truth. Wouldn't that be great? But this is only going to become more complicated as time goes on with the development of AI, which is going to allow for the production of stronger propaganda. It will allow for the better disbursement of propaganda. It's going to be very hard for people to figure out what's real and what isn't. And it's only going to work it's only going to get better if people actively start paying attention to these things. So let's see. Let's see how much I have left here. Just going through my notes. Oh, so here on the positives. This might be positive or not. I happen to think this is mostly positive. There's a branch of the army that engages in propaganda. I'll tell you what, if I was enlisting, I'd sign up for the propaganda unit of the military. It's called the Ghost Army. So this is a division of the United States military that openly does propaganda. And of course, if you are an American, a patriotic person, you believe and you hope that these are the good guys. And I do believe, because it doesn't make sense to me that there would be just nothing but bad propaganda out there to influence us in a negative way. And in many ways, I consider my efforts to be counter propaganda because I'm here trying to the best of my ability to speak truth, to keep things real. Sometimes I keep it a little too real, I've been told. I'm okay with that. But we can use these tactics too. I think health coaches counter propaganda in many ways. We empower people's uh, ability, their innate ability. They have the ability there. We're just pulling it out of them. We are countering the efforts to get them to stop thinking, and we're forcing them to think more. So it can be very powerful. Man, I really got to do a better job at putting together these outlines. But we know cognition, propaganda. Let's see here. Now, with warfare, this is kind of a little all over the place. I apologize, but I mentioned earlier that the amount of effort we put into war with land, sea, and air. Most people are well aware of this. We see this in the video games. We see this in the movies, on TV, in military ads. Whenever you see something like that, it's always, people holding guns, the Navy or the Marines in the water. Now, realize that the scope of cognitive or cyber warfare is probably greater than we can even imagine, much greater than that. They're not going to advertise it. Like you see a gun, you know that's a threat. Propaganda is not as obvious, and it can be very sneaky. So, propaganda and shaping public opinion. We know that the Chinese Communist Party has done this to justify its actions in Hong Kong. We know here's a dark but funny example with North Korea. If you've ever seen this, if like one of the leaders dies or something, I think they did this when what is it, Kim Jong Il, the first one, the previous one, when he died. They do this propaganda effort where they show, like, they film groups of people crying, like very exaggerate, like boo, and they film a whole group of people like that, and they broadcast it through the TV. And you can imagine in a country where they don't have, like, they can't go on Netflix and get a whole variety of shows and stuff like that. That might really shape the minds of some people, like seeing just this exaggerate crying, and the idea is to propagate that emotion, just to get other people crying and all on the same page that their beloved communist leader has died. And we even see similar propaganda efforts coming out of the World Economic Forum. I wish I had downloaded some videos for that, because there's some, I mean, you look at it, it's clear propaganda, the way they put the music and the soft language. We care about you. Listen to us. What a crock of shit. Um, so winding down here, I want to talk about how we can protect ourselves against some of the vulnerabilities that are existential. And it is important to be literate with media and have an understanding of how we might be manipulated with these types of messages, how censorship can have an impact on us, how we can protect ourselves from floating balloons above our house. Okay, this is a joke. But we do have internal vulnerabilities, our own cognition, because our psychology and our cognition can be used against us. We have biases and heuristics. Those are shortcuts in the brain. So, for example, here are some biases and heuristics that or at least examples of possible modes of attack in the context of fifth generation warfare or cognitive warfare. Confirmation bias in political campaigns. So, taking advantage of the fact we might have some data that indicates that this group of people believes very strongly, whatever, some political issue. So we can construct our messaging in a certain way to take advantage of confirmation bias to just, instead of getting the people to think critically, we just want them to confirm what they already know, whether or not it's true. A lot of people do this. Social pressure. If you have some kind of identity, social or political identity, we can leverage that to get you to do something. Framing to influence perception of social issues. So, abortion is a good example of this, and I'm not at all uh, telling you my opinion on that. But they can say instead of pro-abortion, it's pro-choice. That's an example of framing. Narratives, just the construction of a story, because we've mentioned in, I think, the previous episode that our thoughts in our head are basically narratives or stories. And so we can create really powerful stories that can influence people's thought process. Limited attention. We can only hold so many thoughts in our head, And so if we're trying to think about some of the government corruption that's going on, what the hell's going on with the trains? What about Hunter Biden's laptop? Oh, wait, balloons? Hello. So limited attention. Cognitive poverty. This I'm gonna be extra careful with because I think, when I talk about intellectual laziness, some people get upset because I don't know. But cognitive poverty maybe sounds a little nicer. They just don't have it all there. That could be like I think it's different from low intellect because cognitive poverty is like money. Like if somebody's if they have financial poverty, they can make more money. They can, you know, uh, that can be changed. That situation can be changed. So cognitive poverty is maybe for whatever reason you're just not developed there, but you have the capability to. And that's different from something like low intellect, which we know from the research is generally not too changeable. And then intellectual laziness is probably more similar to cognitive poverty. But what about another mode of attack? Leveraging cognitive dissonance. So this is when there are incongruent ideas in people's heads and it makes them uncomfortable. And that can motivate them to just not critically think. The level of discomfort often causes people to just, um, give in to whatever's being pushed the hardest. So one example of this is you see this on college campuses. I hate racism and I also hate white people. So if you were to point out that incongruency to that person spewing that, it would bring about cognitive dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling when you're holding two thoughts that don't go together. So I mean, we could talk about biases and heuristics and modes of attack forever. I mean, there are just so many of them. So if that's something you want to hear more about, please let me know. I've gotten some feedback from people lately that's been very helpful. I have new episodes coming up on AI, new episodes coming up on mental health over the next few weeks. So your feedback does help, and I'm basically putting together an episode for you if you make a request, as long as it fits with the themes of the show. So, the importance of critical thinking and protecting ourselves from internal manipulation. Well, use your intuition. Okay. If something doesn't feel right, listen to your body, use your intuition, be skeptical. Don't just blindly accept things, especially if it seems easy to accept. That could be a big red flag. Fact checking information online. If you're using Snopes, I don't know what to tell you. If you're getting your fact checking from Facebook's trusted fact checkers, I don't know what to tell you. Okay. Don't outsource your thinking. When I say do fact checking, I mean like be really vigilant about it because fact checking isn't just going to a website with somebody who claims to have fact checked for you. That's not fact checking, that's trusting authority. Evaluating the credibility of sources that goes hand in hand. So, not just fact checking, but if you come across some information, see is this legit? Challenge the crowd. This is a big one. Now, I'm not saying be some sort of sociopath where every time the crowd has an opinion, you go against it as a contrarian. That's not what I'm saying. But consider that this is actually a quote from Rand Paul. Mao and Hitler didn't rise to power promising tyranny. They came to power promising equality. So crowds can be controlled. We covered that in episode 3 with the sheep mind, de-individuation. Crowds can be controlled. It's like a type of hacking. And that's very dangerous to people who aren't critically thinking because we have, on one hand, we have a proclivity towards going with the crowd. But on the other hand, the crowd can be manipulated very easily. So there's potential for danger there. Don't follow the crowd. Think first. And if the crowd is worth following, then you can follow the crowd. But we have to watch out because technology is only developing faster. We know with AI, we've already talked in episode 2 about the potentials for AI to manipulate the mind and use next level propaganda. And our brains are only going to further merge with this type of technology as things like Neuralink, Elon Musk's Neuralink develops, where it's literally putting a chip in your brain. That seems very risky as we think about some of these aspects of fifth generation warfare. I mean, that is the merging of the cyber landscape with the cognitive landscape. It just becomes one. I mean, that could make things very easy for fifth generation warfare tactics. But of course, AI can be good or bad. It's a tool and nothing more. Depends who's using it. So, do you feel comfortable with Bill Gates using AI? I don't know. That's for you to determine. I mean, I ask that because Bill Gates is right now, well, at least Microsoft, not Bill Gates. Microsoft is the one who is sort of pioneering the AI development with OpenAI, where they had a large financial investment, and now they're the ones kind of taking over. So whenever you have one large corporation like that trying to take advantage of the newest technological revolution, that's always cause for concern. So with that concern, we can protect our minds, and this is where I start to really end this episode. I see health coaches as fighters in the fifth generation warfare, as well as citizen journalists, I should point out. I have a lot of friends. I know people who are just like me, making their own shows, have their own Substacks because they are just sick of the bullshit and lies that have been spewed for the past few years, and they see an obligation to speak the truth. And that's very much why I am doing this too. Not only this show, but I health coach clients and helping to restore people's power and get people thinking and circumvent the misinformation and all that. But it is important to be vigilant and skeptical of information and uh, fact check and seek out diverse perspectives and critically think as much as possible to try to protect yourself from the manipulation, seeking out differing opinions, challenging your own beliefs, inviting disagreement into your life. So maybe, you could be propagandized. You might have some wrong opinions. I could too. The people who are certain that they're correct, I know a few people like this. It drives me nuts. It really it's draining to be around these types of people when they have such certainty about it. Like I don't know how to explain it. I'll have to work on that. But when people present themselves as like, you're the propagandized one, not me, and like, I know this, you're wrong, I'm right. Anytime you have that black and white thinking, it's these people are either not critically thinking, they're propagandized, they don't know what they're talking about. It's very frustrating. So, I mean, as a reasonable person, I'm pointing out these things so that I can do the best that I can. I can't say that like I'll never be affected by propaganda and I'm 100% right all the time. That's such a foolish thing. But beyond all of what I've said, mental health is definitely important and probably the most important as we discuss all of this because all this stress and attacks and chemical warfare and all these things going on can definitely have an effect on our mental health. A lot of stress and anxiety. So, beyond the physical health, the mental health. So, having stress management techniques or strategies in place, breathing exercise like physical exercise, what have you. What else? Always work on your critical thinking. Like I said, if that's something you think you might need work on, check out my bad arguments episode, which is the previous one to this, number 10. I'm going to have more examples of types of arguments coming up in a future episode. Study psychology, influence, propaganda, or just listen to more of this show. So that's probably where I'll end it. Listen to more of this show if you want more of this type of information, if you do want to protect yourself, because I'm not going to shut up about these ideas. Not always in the context of fifth generation warfare, but so far, a lot of what I've talked about has been related to fifth generation warfare. So if you do want to support my mission and stay healthy and awake and support my agenda towards truth and integrity and health and independent health, free speech, there are a few ways to support. Like I mentioned, you can go to mikevera.com where you can check out my health coaching program. You can check out the one-on-one health coaching. You can check out my Substack, my newsletter, or you can just help spread the word. You can like this podcast, like this episode if you're watching it on Rumble. One more thing, by the way, if you are consuming this podcast in some way, whether you're listening to it or watching it, I do put some audio filter in the audio version. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, for instance, the audio is a little bit better than on Rumble. But if you're watching it, the audio is perfectly acceptable, but you also get the video. So it's up to you. I just wanted to throw it out there that there is video and audio. So please share, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you want to see next, all that good stuff. But most importantly, stay healthy and stay awake.
Yes. There's